Like the darkest pop song Billy Joel never wrote, Friedmans hauntingly asked how far faith goes when it comes to family, how much mercy we'd grant them based merely on our memories, and how forgiveness sometimes endures years of fury before it's granted. That's Nick Rogers of Midwest Film Journal talking about one of my favorite documentaries, Capturing the Friedmans, one of our featured reviews here on Cinephile. As far as new movies are concerned, Skywalkers, A Love Story, which is now available on Netflix, was able to watch that documentary. And hey, more documentaries. This is the place for documentaries here on Cinephile. Made in England, the films of Powell and Pressburger, an outstanding new documentary, executive produced by Martin Scorsese and hosted by Marty, as he tells you all about this great filmmaking duo from England. So those are our movies this week. As far as our wild card is concerned, Doug Liman. You used to always think of it as Doug Liman, but it is pronounced Doug Liman. That's, you never interview somebody, you make sure you Google it. Before I interviewed him, I double-checked Google. Yeah, it is Liman, okay? Doug Liman, who's a terrific director. Swingers, one of my favorite movies of all time. He's done Go. He's done a couple of Tom Cruise movies. He's done the Bourne movie. Like, he's unbelievable. So he's got a new film called The Instigators. Matt Damon and Casey Affleck star in that film. It's coming out on Apple Plus on August 9th. It's in theaters August 2nd. Doug was kind enough to allow me to interview him for 20 minutes. So it's a great interview. You're really going to enjoy it. My buddy Adam Amin, by the way, who of course hooked us up with Joe Buck. Please go to Apple Podcast, by the way. Subscribe, rate, and review. How great was Joe? Funny, entertaining, showing a different side of himself. I thought he was awesome. So make sure everyone goes and please do leave a review there. Adam interviewed Casey Affleck and Matt Damon. They're at the Red Sox game, as a matter of fact, Sox-Yankees this past weekend. So a lot of talk around the Instigators. So it's in theaters again coming up this Friday, and it'll be on Apple Plus next Friday. And Doug's interview is great. And as far as, everyone's talking about Twisters and Deadpool versus Wolverine. We'll get to that at some point. Me and Harry have not had a chance yet. But Harry's also seen a few movies. Harry, what have you seen? Land of Bad as well? Netflix war movie, right?
I saw Land of Bad. I saw Guy Ritchie's The Covenant. That's probably a couple years old now.
Yeah. It came out last year. It's not bad. A year ago. Jake Gyllenhaal.
Mm-hmm. And then I don't even know if it's worth a review, but I did watch I think 1998 sexual crime thriller Wild Things. Have you seen that movie?
Yeah. Matt Dillon, absolutely. We're going to discuss that movie. I can't wait.
That movie was very bizarre.
Well, there's one scene in particular, Nev Kim. Oh my God. Yeah. Denise Richards. Okay, great. I'm so glad. Wild Things popping up on the radar. Excellent stuff out of here. By the way, we're on YouTube now, so make sure you go to YouTube, subscribe, rate, review. I'm making an effort here, a conscious effort to stare more at the camera. So this is definitely more for our YouTube audience because I did get some feedback. I'm looking down too much. I'm looking right at you right here. YouTube audience, I'm looking right at you. Subscribe now on YouTube. I want to start with this, though. I had a great night out with Paul Giamatti. This was amazing to me. Stephen Colbert is benefiting NJPAC, so the New Jersey, whatever it stands for. It's through the Montclair film industry, and very infamously, before Harry was aboard with this last October, I missed the chance for a night with Martin Scorsese because I was at Game 1 of the World Series. Sent my buddy John LeBoy, who conveniently in his iPhone recorded it for me, so I was able to hear the whole thing, which was awesome. But this time I was here in person. And by the way, the date changed. Originally it was supposed to be in June. Some conflict came up. I was like, oh my God. But thankfully, Friday night, Paul Giamatti, Stephen Colbert at it. And my first takeaway is this. Shocked how many people love Paul Giamatti as much as me. Like, I walked in that theater, I'm like, wow. Like, I just said to you, Harry, like, hey, Friday night, what are you up to? Like, not much. You want to go see Paul Giamatti speak? Like for what money would you be like, okay, sure. Like I asked the usher, I'm like, how many people are in here? He's like, 1,000, 1,200. I go, there's 1,200 people on a Friday night in the summer to go see Paul Giamatti speak. Like I'm thrilled. Like I'm thrilled there's that many people who love him as much as I do. I also paid for a front row ticket, which again, in hindsight, like, not sure what my thought process was. It's like I'm not going to see Beyonce here. Like, I don't know why I was like, I got to get a front row ticket. Like, I could have seen Paul Giamatti fine from 20 rows back, but I paid a lot of money. I might tell you off air how much I paid. I can't believe how much I paid. In retrospect, I don't know if you do that, right? You make a purchase, you go, I got to go. I got to go see U2 or something. After, like, wow, I didn't need to pay that much. I got to just, pull back a little bit. But regardless, we invested a lot of money there. $28 popcorn, $7 hot dog, $7 popcorn. Although the guy was very nice. He gave me an extra popcorn. I go, fine, well, I got to give you a $5 tip, so we're coming out ahead, but whatever, sure, $12, okay. And he comes out, and it was great because Colbert is a good interviewer in that he's not just, going through in a linear fashion, where were you born, what was your first film, what was your break? He kind of just went all over the place, which I enjoyed. And Giamatti's a naturally entertaining guy, good storyteller. As far as highlights of what they're talking about, this I found really interesting because I always wonder this about actors, is their ability to memorize so much. And Colbert was like, how do you do it? Like, because when I meet people sometimes, that's one of the first things they'll ask actors, like, how do you memorize the lines? And Giamatti goes, well, like anything, it's muscle memory. And the more you do it, the better you get at it. And he said, I think that there does come an age where you're kind of tapped out. Because I'm probably getting there now. Like I'm 57, and now there'll be a couple of times like, oh, what's my line again? I'm like I think the memory kind of just goes, right. We've done all we can. We've topped it off. But he said on John Adams, for which he won an Emmy, won a Golden Globe, he said, my memory was so good because that guy never shut up. John Adams was always talking. And he goes, and they'd write me like last second speeches. I'd be coming out of my trailer, walking to the set, and hand me a page. And I was able to, at that point, look at the page. Okay, got it. Like that's he had like a photographic memory. And he goes, I also became so well versed in that character and that language, like an ad lib within the character, which is something that's exceedingly rare to see. So I thought that was a really cool story. Colbert asked him point blank. He goes, "What's the movie or show? You have like 100 credits to your name. What's the thing you wish more people had seen?" And I've even seen this, and I love Paul Giamatti. But it was a show he did. He produced it called Lodge 49 on AMC. Did you ever see it, Harry? Have you heard of it?
No, I've never heard of it.
Most of that crowd. Normally when someone says something like, he says, "Oh, I love Steph Curry in the Warriors." You'll get like, 5 people in the crowd start cheering.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. There's a woo. Right. So when he said, he goes, "Yeah, there's a show I produced called Lodge 49." It was silent. But even Giamatti was like, he goes, "See, nobody even seen this damn thing." But I remember, I don't think he was in it. He produced it, and I believe then he made a cameo like in the second season, or maybe had like a small bit part. But I've never seen it. So Lodge
It's not
49,
even old. It came out in 2018.
right? But apparently just came and went. I want to say 2 seasons, AMC.
Yeah,
like
2
that.
seasons.
So
Wyatt Russell, huh?
yeah, it was one of those that I was like, just came and went. I thought he mentioned like one of these indie movies and stuff he made, but he's like a voracious reader, and it's well known if you follow Paul Giamatti. But like Colbert's like, all right, seriously, this reading thing. He's like, you once told me you like going to shoot movies on site because you're such a maniac for going to use bookstores and just buying stuff. He's like, how many books do you have? He's like, I couldn't even. He's like, no, seriously. He's like, 7,000, 8,000, 10,000. He's like, it's insane. He goes, like, I have a real problem. Like, if you go to my apartment, like, it's books everywhere. Like, it's a lot. He's like, oh my God. He's like, so it's like, he goes, I'm never gonna get to all of them, but I'm in a used bookstore and I just like seeing it. Like, oh, you know what? I'll get to that one day. I'll get to this one day. He's like, what's the last book you just read? He goes, The Day of the Locust, which is a 1935 book. I'm gonna go from the library. I've heard of it. I've heard of the movie actually. Speaking of Donald Sutherland, just passed away, and he mentioned, he goes, Donald Sutherland's in the movie version. It's okay. He goes, there's never been a great movie version. He goes, but the book is awesome. It's one of the great Hollywood books. He goes, just finished reading the other day. He goes, at one point you were able to read a book a day. Do you mind? I was like, yeah. He goes, again, it was that John Adams fiction. He goes, I want to repeat that. He goes, you can read a book a day. He's like, yeah, I was just flying through. I'm like, man. It's like, I know you come from a family of academics. Your dad, very famously president of Yale, later commissioner of Major League Baseball. Mom was a teacher, et cetera. He's like, but that's kind of nuts. He's like, yeah, because I'm not there now. He goes, now I just read spy novels and mystery novels and crap like that. But he goes, yeah, I was able to fire through. And he said, what work do you how did he phrase it? He goes, what work do you regret now? And he laughed. He goes, well, that's easy. He goes, I was in a Spider-Man movie. And I started laughing. I was like, oh, so he regrets he was the character of Rhino. And Colbert even asked him, he goes, which one was that? He goes, I don't know. I was one of them. I don't know. And I think it's Amazing Spider-Man 2. So I haven't gone back and revisited that, but Paul Giamatti does regret being in a Spider-Man movie. He then said, he goes, what role would you love to be in which will never happen? Like he goes, I'm sure when you're flipping the scripts, you're reading the scripts, they're never, do I get the girl? Do I get the girl? Giamatti's like, trust me, I don't get those scripts. I don't get, romantic leading man. He goes, I'd probably love to play Superman. He's like, really? He's like, yeah, because I'm not a big superhero guy. I'm not a big Marvel guy and all that stuff. He's like, but if I had one, let's just laughing. Paul Giamatti is Superman.
That is funny.
Goes,
you could make a movie about that. There's something there. Yeah.
Right. A documentary of just Paul Giamatti trying to play Superman. I think would be funny as well. Yeah. He then asked, he's like, I like when they go to the audience because, crowd asks weird stuff. And one guy was like, do you want to be an actor forever? He's like, yeah. He goes, but I do think there comes a time when there's an age you should probably cap it. And Colbert asked a good question. He goes, when people watch Paul Giamatti, they know they're in good hands. We know even if the movie's not good, he's going to be great. He always brings it. He's like, yep. He's like, who's that actor for you? He goes, Denzel Washington. And he goes, I've never worked with him. He goes, when I watched Paul Giamatti, goes, I was just on the plane. I watched Equalizer 3. And he goes, it's 2/3 of a good movie. He's like, the last third going, eh. He goes, that guy is so effing good. He goes, every time you see Denzel, I'm like, he's amazing. He goes, I would be shuddering to. He goes, who else? He goes, well, the real one is Robert Duvall. He goes, Robert Duvall's never made a bad movie, never made an inauthentic performance. He goes, I love him, I adore him. He goes, he's like 95 still acting. And Colbert was like, he goes, network. He was unbelievable. He goes, when Duvall's like, I want a big, fat, big-titted ratings man. And he's like, what's your favorite? And I thought he was going to say The Godfather, but he said, actually, Grace Santini He goes, it's awesome because he goes, he plays this like abusive father, but like you can still tell that he loves his kid. I haven't seen Great Santini in a long time. I should probably watch it again. Maybe it's on Max. I don't know if Harry's ever seen it, but it's a good Duvall movie from late 70s, I want to say. He's from New Haven. So naturally someone said, okay, New Haven, known for pizza. He's like, yep. He's like, the three places, Pepe's, Modern, Sally's, because I'm a Pepe's guy, always been a Pepe's guy. Because although West Haven now is a place called Zafardi's, which apparently is excellent pizza as well. He said he grew up in Brooklyn, like with his son. And he said he took his kid to the New Haven pizzas. And he was like, Dad, I don't get it. Like, this is like a national thing. People come to New Haven for the pizza. So it's definitely an acquired taste. Harry, are you a Pepe's guy? Never been to New Haven for the
I've
pizza?
never done the Connecticut pizza.
Yeah.
I'm intrigued, I would definitely
Yeah.
go, but I've never done it.
Yeah, I would say Pepe's of the three, but I mean Modern's pretty good. I'm not as enamored as the people who are like, oh my God, New Haven pizza. I quite honestly think New York, New Jersey pizza is better where we are now, but all good. It's definitely good pizza if you're into that kind of thing. The last thing he said, somebody asked again, you're such an avid reader. Oh, this story is bizarre. He said, Colbert goes, through a mutual friend, I heard you went to Sundance and you packed nothing but books. And G-Mike goes, yeah, what happened was, again, wherever I go, I just have to have books with me. He's like, okay. He goes, how many books are we talking? He goes, probably 20 books. He goes, you packed 20 books, but nothing else. He's like, yeah. He goes, I got there and I was like, no underwear, nothing. And I had to call my PR team. I'm like, he goes, can you imagine the poor bastard? Can we go get Paul Giamatti some underwear, shirts, and socks?
Can you
Amazing.
imagine being the PR person being like,
Oh,
okay, I guess.
yeah, we got to find this. We got to find a production assistant and get Paul Giamatti some underwear. That's what's come to now. I couldn't imagine ever traveling anywhere without. Like you might forget a thing or two, right? Maybe I don't know your toothbrush or something or a floss, but forgetting like everything. He'd only pack books.
I go the other way. If I'm reading a hardcover book and I'm traveling, I think I'm leaving it at home. I'm picking up a softcover book. I can't. That's a lot of airspace there.
Yeah, 20 books to have with you. Like, how long are you going to Sundance for? Like, even he was like, what were you promoting? He said, Win-Win, which that got a good cheer. New Jersey movie. And he was like, yeah, Jersey movie. Yeah, okay, good. And he's like, yeah, Win-Win we were promoting. And in my head, I'm like, how you were there at Sundance like a week, top 20 books for a week? Like this guy, it's amazing. Anyways.
I looked up real quick a photo of Paul Giamatti in Spider-Man 2. I just texted it to you. It's pretty funny. He's like an animatronic rhino. So he's like in a machine. Like it's really funny. Yeah. No wonder he regrets it. He looks like he was like nailed to a cross for half the movie.
Oh my God, that's rough. Because he's then he likes doing weird stuff. He's like, trust me, man. He goes, I love doing Planet of the Apes. He goes, work with Tim Burton. He goes, I got to ride a horse. I got to run like as an ape. It was awesome.
Yeah.
Like he'll do weird stuff, but Rhino is one that he definitely regrets. He said, he goes, people love taking pictures of you on the subway and stuff. And Giamatti's like, yeah, because I don't follow it, but I have a friend who tells me on Twitter, there's a guy, sad Paul Giamatti, like he sends quotes of mine or like pretending to be me. Because that stuff I kind of find funny because it's bizarre. Because I don't know why anybody has an interest in this, but if you ever do, I have looked it up now. Sad Paul Giamatti. It's pretty funny.
Funny.
Very famously, after winning the Critics' Choice Award, where I was at in LA in January, he went to In-N-Out, and then there was a big celeb seeing Paul eating that. And he goes, Colbert asked a funny question. He goes, do you have any regret? Because you once worked for Burger King. And he's like, oh, that's right. I didn't even think I did once do like an ad campaign. He was the voice of some Burger King. He's like that because that's why In-N-Out never gave me a deal. He's like, but In-N-Out is your thing. He's like, yeah. Giamatti goes, if I'm in LA, In-N-Out's my staple. He's like, all right, we're learning a lot about you. New Haven pizza, In-N-Out. And the only time it got awkward was towards the end, the question and answer. Someone said, hey, want to talk baseball? And he's like, yeah. He's like, did you play baseball? Or no, Colbert had said, he goes, sports. What sports do you do? He goes, I swam. He goes, okay, what was your thing? He goes, backstroke. He goes, which is funny because no one's a tall, skinny guy. And it was me. He goes, were you good? He goes, no, I was fine. He goes, I was, first alternate. I was okay. Whatever. I was on the swim team. It's not, he goes, it's not something I recommend. And they're like, really? He's like, to this day I swim, which is fun. But he goes, it's long hours, dark, it's dank. It's like, it's just smells. Like, it's not a cool sport. Because for my parents, it was like, oh my God, like a swim meeting. I'm telling you right now, for anybody, parents out there, you don't want to do this for your family. He goes, what about baseball? And he goes, yeah, I guess I played baseball. I was okay. He goes, what position? He goes, shortstop. Colbert's like, you're fast. You might, relatively speaking. I mean, it was baseball. I was a kid or whatever. I was okay. Because my brother's a huge baseball fan. He's like, okay. So the guy says at the end, he goes, very famously, your father banned Pete Rose from baseball and very shortly passed away. what impact did that have on you and the family? And even I'm telling you, Harry, the whole crowd cringed. I was like, like it's been an hour and a half here, man. Nice, fun levity. Like this is a seriously dark topic. And Giamatti says, well, it's not something I talk about often, but I will. And he's like, I don't think he loved doing it. I think it was a really tough spot for my dad. He's like, but he loved being the commissioner of baseball because he just thought it was a crazy thing that a guy like him ever got to be in a spot like that. Like he was the president of Yale, like he was, a man of letters who just happened to love baseball. He was the National League president for before that. He goes, that was really cool. He would take me and my brother to games and stuff. And again, for my brother, it was really cool. But yeah, that's where that's at. And I was like, Colbert, quickly, you took it. One more question. We gotta get out of here. Oh my God. Like, imagine bringing that up to somebody. But I remember listening to Scott Feinberg's podcast, Hollywood Chatter, and he said to Giamatti, this was last January or February, he was like, hey, do you think Pete Rose should be in the Hall of Fame? And Giamatti's like, I'm not touching that. Like, listen, man, like my dad banned him for life. I'm not gonna get people fired up all these years later. The last thing he did say about baseball and sports, because one movie I would love to do is, he goes, because this was always funny to my dad. He goes, I love the umpire. He goes, like, when I was a kid, I'd watch the game and I go, I just found umpires fascinating. And he goes, there's never been a great movie about an umpire. So somebody in the crowd was like, oh, I'll vote right now. If there's a Paul Giamatti movie about umpires, we're in. And Giamatti goes, here's the title. It would just be ump. It would just be my face, just ump. You're out of here. And then someone said, he goes, why do you think there's never been a great movie about umpires? He's like, well, I mean, there's never been a great movie about NBA referees. Like, what's the interest level? But he's like, I just think umpires are fascinating. He goes, listen, I was 5 or 6 and my brother would play stickball. And I go, I want to be the umpire. He said, we don't need an umpire. We're 6. And he's like, no, I want to be the guy. You're out of here. Like, this is the guy who's the arbiter of everything. But it was really funny, man. Entertaining night. Again, I don't know why I paid so much for a front row seat, but I was right there, man. You know what I thought? Here, I know you're younger than I was, so you never watched The Tonight Show with Jay Leno, but when Leno would come out, he would like shake hands with the front crowd. So I think bizarrely in my mind, I thought Giamatti will come out, and because I'm right in the front row, he might just come out and shake a few of our hands, but he did not do that. Maybe if I had extended my hand, but that would have been odd. I looked over, there was security there, so I'm like, why is this guy trying to extend his hand? But man, I could see right up in his nose hairs. That's how close I was. So it was great. A fun night. Stephen Colbert and Paul Giamatti. Very, very cool. That was my recap there. All right, let's talk some movies. Because I talk so much, I want Harry to take the ball. You do Land of Bad first, and I'll get into my documentaries. What do you got? Netflix war movie, currently available.
Yeah, so let me first say that with these war movies, Covenant, same way, a lot of these more modern war movies is like, there's a part of them that are like, these are military propaganda. Right. And it's like, you got to sort of,
we want you.
Yes. You got to go in eyes wide open that like one of the goals seemingly is to make it seem as cool as possible to be in the military. They succeeded. And it's funny, Land of Bad, I was just looking, it's getting panned, like not critically, but like, it's like seeming like all these articles like, oh, it's a flop, all that stuff. Oh, okay. And it's a little, not, it's like unserious, it's like not, there's not some amazing, emotional through line or it's not based on a true story. It doesn't seem like, so it's just this sort of like random, almost like Rambo-y, 80s reprise action movie.
Yeah.
But I gotta say they get it with these movies. You want military guys like razzing each other, being ridiculous. You want cool, shooting, poking around corners with guns. And then you want like really giant set pieces of like explosions and stuff. And this has it all in spades. Like it's got it. It's also got this really strange Russell Crowe character, which I think is mostly doesn't make any sense and is bad. But it is kind of works for me. He's like so the whole idea is this movie is a drone strike operator on his first mission out, and then Russell Crowe is like the guy he's radioing to. And so they have this kind of interesting thing where he's like, Russell Crowe's back at home, and he can see him because of the drone technology, whatever. Russell Crowe's this sort of like not good with authority guy. He's wearing like a Hawaiian shirt under his military stuff.
Russell Crowe's anti-authoritarian. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. And but again, like pitched up in this sort of insane way. Like why is he in the military then? And like how is he an officer? It just doesn't really make sense. But it makes for a really fun. You're cross-cutting between Crowe trying to figure out how to help him from afar, and he's boots on the ground. It just it to me, it was like it knew what it was, which was like a non-serious, fun, military action flick. Didn't try to be anything above that, and totally succeeded.
I like it.
Yeah, so I'd say check it out. Give it a quick watch.
All right, Land of Bad on Netflix. Couple
Mhm.
hours, nothing too outrageous, right?
Yeah, it's
Length time,
like
yeah.
it's probably like an hour 40.
Okay.
It gets its name, and this is really all you need to know from the movie.
Yeah.
Is at one point, seemingly randomly, one of the Marines or Navy guys puts up his arms and has two tattoos, one that says land of and the other that says bad. He's like, welcome to the land of bad. So
Let me just hit you over the head with what exactly is happening here.
if you
I
want
love
that,
it.
if you want a movie like that, you'll be able to go check it out.
I love it. The double tattoo, Land of Bad. Okay, let's keep things rolling. Let's talk a little documentary. So I have to talk to you about Made in England, the films of Powell and Pressburger, the new Scorsese documentary. So he didn't actually direct it. I believe Doug Hinton is his name, but Marty's basically the entire documentary. I mean, he's front and center. The movie starts out. I grew up in Little Italy, watching movies on television. I got enraptured by Powell and Pressburger. Who are they? These are who they are. And he said The Thief of Baghdad is one of the first films he saw. And the movie starts showing, archival clips, and it's like, this great bursts of color. And then it shows, like, it was very smart the way they did it. They dilute it. And he goes, this is what I was seeing, though, because he was watching it on black and white, and still he was mesmerized by it. And it was fantastical and enchanting, etc. And he said, I really became enraptured by their movies. And it's amazing. It's a great film education watching this documentary, because I think Powell and Pressburger, even for real film literate people, are not particularly well known. And I think it was really smart. He makes the point, like, aside from Hitchcock, who's the most famous British director of all time, they're right there. They're number two. And some of these movies they made, Black Narcissus, which is about, a nun, and this, erotic thriller, Peeping Tom, which is a film that Powell made later on his own after they had split, which was about a serial killer. Basically, cast him out. He was a pariah in England, within working in that industry after that. And of course, The Red Shoes, which, one thing about Marty, he loves The Red Shoes. That's one of his favorite movies. He always talks about it. And what I thought was really fascinating was he not only spoke about those films and made it a film education, but also about how those movies impacted his own life and his own career. And The Red Shoes, he's talked about this before, but very famously with Raging Bull, he said, what it taught him. That movie's about a ballet dancer. I haven't seen that one in years too. I need to revisit that. But it's like apparently a really obsessive movie about obsessive ballet dancers. So it was a real influence on Black Swan as well. I'm sure people have seen the Aronofsky film, won Portman the Oscar. But one of the aspects of it is that at the time, Marty was really worried about color saturation stuff. This was 1980 when he made Raging Bull. So he's like, you got to make sure the red looks right. And like the red didn't look good. So that's why Raging Bull, one of the reasons why he wanted to put in black and white. He was worried about film stock and desaturation of the colors and how it would look. If, what if the boxing red is too red or not red enough, et cetera. The other big thing is with The Red Shoes, he said what he learned is that, how, because again, Marty will tell you very honestly and openly, not a sports guy, doesn't like sports at all. Had asthma as a kid, never played sports, couldn't care less. So, he's doing a boxing movie. How do I do a boxing movie? And he said he would watch all these old fights and stuff with De Niro. And he said he realized, he goes, the key is going to be just like in The Red Shoes, Powell and Pressburger, when they shot it, it's always in the stage. The action stays in the ring. So very, dramatically in Raging Bull, he makes it very subjective. Right? Everything's from Jake's point of view. When he's punching, when he's getting hit, and he's adding all those sound effects and making it very expressionistic. So it's cool to see how the Red Shoes experience that. Age of Innocence, which is a film I love, Daniel Day-Lewis, Michelle Pfeiffer, Winona Ryder. Again, that was an influence from the Life and Death of Colonel Blimp, which I recently watched. That's available on the Criterion Channel. Because again, Marty said that's about repressed emotion and having this love for someone, but holding it back. And again, they show clips of DDL and Winona Ryder, Michelle Pfeiffer from that film. So it's always cool when a great filmmaker talks about his own influences while raving about someone else's work. But back to Powell and Pressburger. One guy's British, one guy's Hungarian. They hook up. Pressburger is more of a writer. He comes up with the idea. They write the script together. They produce it together, and Powell directs it. And they make these movies and become very successful. And essentially, they said they just had a real kinship. They never had a problem kind of finishing each other's sentences. They had the same dramatic license and ideas. The Life and Death of Colonel Blimp, which is a great film, Churchill disavowed it because he didn't like the fact he thought it was critical of war. And this is around World War II. It didn't matter to them. They made it anyways. Became a hugely popular film in Britain. And it's really funny. And, the whole duel, the war starts at midnight. It's a really funny term. Giamatti actually loves it. He was recently in the Criterion Closet, and Giamatti's like, oh my God, Life and Death of Colonel Blimp. I love that movie. It's a really cool film. Eventually these two split up, though, just, creative differences, et cetera. And what happened is that when Marty achieved some modicum of fame with Mean Streets and Taxi Driver, he went to go find Michael Powell. Michael Powell was living in the English countryside by himself. I don't make it sound like he was destitute, but they said he'd been forgotten. He was kind of just living a very quiet life, you know. And Marty was like, people need to realize how great these movies are. So him and his buddies, Coppola and Spielberg, et cetera, they start, kind of getting him back in the mix. And I guess they basically hired Powell to like do some stuff. I think with American Zoetrope, which was Coppola's production company at the time. But they kind of brought it back. So it's like a really cool love story. Like imagine you had a mentor, a hero who made great films, faded away into obscurity. You find them, no, the world needs to know. And then they had a real renaissance. And even cooler, perhaps most importantly, Marty's longtime editor, Thelma Schoonmaker, who he's worked with since Raging Bull in 1980, introduces her to Michael Powell in 1984. They got married. It's amazing.
Oh.
Yeah, near the end, there's like a shot. It says, thanks for the introduction, Marty. And it's a shot of Michael Powell and Thelma Schoonmaker. Unfortunately, he passed away in 1990, so they did have a short-lived marriage. But it was amazing to me to think about how this connection was made. And I just think it's a really great tribute to their films and learning about movies. And I'm sure, like me, Harry, if someone said to you, the De Palma documentary came out and it was just Brian De Palma talking about his movies, like whoever that filmmaker is, it's always nice when you love movies to learn about movies and to learn about these filmmakers. So I thought it's a wonderful movie. I really enjoyed it. I give it 3.5 Maple Leafs. It's only playing in New York City on a couple of screens, so it's gonna be tough to find. But hopefully at some point, I'm sure it'll be streaming and available elsewhere. But it's another reminder of what Scorsese is able to do for such a great artist and America's greatest living director, in my opinion, one of the greatest directors of all time. He gives back so much, right? He wants everyone to know about these other filmmakers, these other influences, which is incredibly generous. Like I can't think of any other discipline, any other artist in whatever field it may be, art, painting, sculpture, who says, hey, my work's pretty good, but you got to check out these guys. These guys were unbelievable. They had a huge influence on me. It really shows the generosity of Martin Scorsese. So make sure you check out Made in England, the films of Powell and Pressburger. Next up, it's available on Netflix, Skywalkers, A Love Story. Question for you, Harry. Are you agoraphobic? How are you with the fear of heights?
Not too bad. I'm okay. Yeah.
Okay, so you can definitely watch this. I had a problem. There was no question. I was literally watching the movie with my hands in my eyes like this. I was like, oh my God. It's about these two true Skywalkers, and it made me think about Man on Wire, which was an outstanding documentary about Philippe Petit. That came out a few years back, won the Academy Award for Best Documentary. Great, great film. And this is about a couple, young, attractive Russian couple who literally scale the heights of Man Unseen. Like it's nuts. Like you watch the trailer right now, Harry, while I'm talking. It's unbelievable what these two accomplish. And there's so much work that goes into this. I mean, you're just climbing skyscrapers. This is your living. And I'm just like, how do you make money off this? Is always my first question. And it's like, oh, they're posting stuff on Instagram. One of the most bizarre images of this entire movie. I'm like, they climb the sculpture. I have no idea how big it is. I don't know, 10,000 feet, you tell me. And at one point, she has to change. And I'm like, are you kidding? Like, even my wife's like, look at what she's wearing. I'm like, when the higher up you go, the wind must be bad. And she's like, wearing basically a bikini here just so we can post this on Instagram. We can get some followers, get some money out of this. I'm like, this is amazing. Imagine Chanel is endorsing this. Let me just make sure I get to the top wearing my nice little Chanel brassiere. Okay, cool. Anyways, that's the life. That's their life. They climb up these sculptures. So there are a couple of daredevils. And I'm telling you, man, the way it's shot, it's unbelievable. Like I don't even know how they did it. They must have obviously cameras attached themselves, but the amount of shots that they have of being at the top of these crazy sculptures and looking down, I'm like, oh my God. Like, again, I don't think I'm particularly agoraphobic. Watching this movie, I'm like, whoo, like my heart's pounding. Think like, geez, one bad misstep, and there's like no harness. All I kept thinking about was like lumberjacks and they're climbing trees. They have that big thing around the tree. They have special boots. She's wearing like Nikes. Like there's like special shoes. He's like, I mean, you got to be in great shape. Obviously, his upper body strength is great. She's in unbelievable shape. But I'm like, they are literally just climbing these sculptures. This is their life. They go up there, they dress, they make funny poses and stuff. Put it on Instagram. Like it's unbelievable. I have to start following Instagram now. But it's an excellent documentary. I really enjoyed it. It's called Skywalkers: A Love Story. It does ride that fine line between genius and madness, the way so many people are. I'd have to think if I was their family member, I'm like, hey man, like I think, you kind of proven it. Like after the first 10 sculptures that you climbed, this is illegal. Like at any point, if you could get caught and arrested, you'd be in prison is it really worth it just for the whatever monetary value you're getting from Instagram? But of course, when you're a thrill seeker and you get that rush like nothing else, I guess this is their purpose in life. But yeah, Skywalker's A Love Story. I'll give it three Maple Leafs. I'll give the Made in England 3.5 Maple Leafs. But I would encourage checking it out if you want to see something like that and that kind of story. But these thrill seekers, man, there's something else. This is not something you would ever do, Harry. You're a lawbreaker. You're not gonna break the law to go climb a sculpture and just take some pictures on the gram.
Here's my question, and maybe they get into it in the documentary. How do you find out that you like doing that? Like, because there are some
Yeah.
most of the things I realized I like doing, I sort of stumbled into them.
Yeah.
I've never like, how do you look at a tall building and, be like, what I want to do is kiss my boyfriend up there. I can't even, like, it's just not something that's going through my mind,
Sadly, the documentary does not delve too much into that psychology, but I'm with you. I wish they had. Like, was there a moment, you were 6 years old and you saw the CN Tower and said, okay, one day I'm going to climb that sucker. My
Right.
God, I'm going to do it. But you're right.
Right.
They're
Yeah.
just twisted and demented and warped. And that's what I mean. In some ways, it's admirable. I'm like, wow, this is incredible. Obviously, it's an amazing achievement. In some ways, it's just demented. I'm like, and in some ways, it's sad, quite honestly. I'm like, really, this is what you've attached your life to. And I mean, some people probably look deeper into it. This is maybe it's a answer against the repression of Russia, like this feeling to be boundless when you're shackled down this communist regime. Like perhaps there's some psychology to it like that.
Mhm.
Again, I can't go deep enough, but maybe that's a part of it. Skywalker's a love story on Netflix. You should check it out. All right, you got Wild Things. Let's go.
Yeah, yes. I was good. Okay. Well, I think I threw it on, this I'm sure gets a lot of the cinephile listeners. I'm on Netflix. I'm trying to figure out what I want to watch. I see the critically acclaimed tab. And
Yeah.
so I'm poking through and I'm like, oh, okay, I've never heard of this movie. It's allegedly critically acclaimed according to the shadowy cabal of Netflix
Yes.
engineers. And so I threw it on and it's an extremely sexual movie and it's very over the top. And the first 45 minutes, I'm like, okay, this is a kind of interesting, like maybe the whole time I'm watching, I'm like, why is this critically acclaimed? Because it's not like the acting isn't so good. It's a little soapy, but I'm like, okay, maybe this is the first time they've done a movie like this, and it does sort of tackle some kind of interesting issues of like a teacher sleeping with a student, all this stuff. And then I don't want to spoil it, but the second half of the movie devolves into this insane mega twist, a twist on a twist on a twist. And now I'm still not sure I would call it a critically acclaimed movie, but I do see at least the novelty of the movie. It's just a very kind of like wacky over the top thriller.
Yes, I'm with you. It's not critically acclaimed. I just checked. If we're looking at Rotten Tomatoes as a barometer, 64% from the audience. Again, for those that don't know, 60% is the bare minimum. Above that is positive. So 64% is not critically acclaimed. And even worse, the audience score is 54%. So the average person watching this film does not think it's critically acclaimed. It's directed by John McNaughton. You're right. It's that era of like 90s erotic thrillers. Right? Came out in 1998. If you like those actors, Denise Richards, Matt Dillon, Bill Murray's hilarious in it. I do remember Bill Murray's. Yeah. Kevin Bacon, Nev Campbell. There's a very famous three-way scene. I mean, I couldn't tell you much more about the film, except as you said, it was very silly and of that time and a decent watch. Where was it available? Was it Netflix? You said
It was on Netflix. Yeah.
Oh.
And there are 2 or 3 scenes that are just like very sexual.
Yes.
There's like a kissing, 2 girls kissing scene.
Yep.
And it was almost like if you were to make fun of like 90s sort of like Playboy erotica, you would play this scene. It's like, what if the 2 girls were in bikinis and white shirts and then they started kissing? Like it really is like
no, campy is the right word for it. It's definitely over the top and silly, and it's leaning into that. Remember, the score is really good too. I believe it's George Clinton who did the score to it. I remember it's a pretty good score, and obviously very beautiful shots, sun dappled, etc. Wild Things on Netflix. All right, we're gonna get to Doug in a second. I really want to do Capturing the Friedmans. This is a hell of a documentary, man. One of my favorites of all time. The reason I thought about it was Andrew Jarecki recently came out with The Jinx Part 2, which is available on Max, and I think that's really kind of what he's gonna be known for years from now. Like, hey, he's the guy that put Robert Durst in jail.
Right.
But before he did that with The Jinx, he made a film called Capturing the Friedmans, and it's this amazing documentary. Originally, he wanted to make it about one of the kids, David Friedman, who is a clown. And I'm not being that in a pejorative sense. Like, oh, this guy's a real clown. He is actually a clown, and he's one of New York's top entertainers, like a celebrity entertainer. So he wanted to do a documentary with this guy because he's a clown. And in the midst of talking to him, he was like, man, I got some stories. I got this backstory. I was like, wait, what? And so you're 7 minutes in before you really understood the movie is about. And then bam, they go back to the scene in Great Neck, Long Island, where his father and his brother were arrested under charges of child abuse. And the story starts unfolding like an onion, peeling back layer after layer. And you've got, all these police investigators and cops at that time. The mom, who's unbelievable, Eleanor, telling stories about the family and the brothers, mainly David, but also Jesse telling his own story upon being arrested, etc. You don't hear from Arnold himself because the documentary will explain why. But the story of Arnold Friedman, the patriarch of this family, who's beloved by his kids. They're like a wolf pack. They just love their dad. He can do no wrong. And yet the reason he was caught by the police was he was intercepted for having some child pornography. They searched the house. He's like, yeah, that's it. It's just one magazine, whatever. Okay, cool. And the mom's talking to her. She's like, no, he told me that he likes to look at these things sometimes, whatever. I'm like, oh my God, like how disturbing is this going to get? And then little by little, there's a story that he used to teach a computer class. He was a teacher, computer class after hours. And the allegation was that him and Jesse were abusing the kids, physically, sexually, etc. They tell this sort of story about playing leapfrog and stuff and being sodomized. It's just, it's really disturbing. But it becomes this real guessing game of, were they railroaded? Were they unfairly accused? And with Arnold, you say, okay, he's clearly a disturbed man. And later on, the documentary reveals the fact he did say that he had abused or had experiences with underage kids, but not in that circumstance, which already is revolting enough. But Jesse says he never did anything like that, never saw his father do anything like that. So it really becomes a great guessing game of did they or didn't they? And it's got wonderful supporting characters. One of them, Peter Panero, who's the Long Island lawyer, who just seems to be here, the epitome of like oily lawyer. Like when he's telling the story, like great Long Island accent, this whole look, I go, this guy's just straight out of Central Casting. But he tells a story about going to see Arnold Friedman. Arnold says, that's probably the most jaw-dropping scene, the most nauseating scene for me in the movie, is when he says he sees Arnold in prison, and he says, "Hey, can you tell the guard to move?" He's like, "Why?" Is it because that child is bouncing on his dad's lap and it's getting me excited? I'm like, oh my God, like a 4-year-old kid. I'm like, oh. But apparently it's his idea to have Jesse plead, blah, blah, blah. Again, I don't want to spoil the whole thing. I'm just telling you snippets of it. But riveting documentary, because anytime a documentary is telling you, did they or didn't they? What's the side of right or wrong? I thought it was a masterpiece.
I couldn't agree more. I had no idea. You were just like, oh, this is on the docket. Let me watch it. I never heard of it, nothing about it. I was floored. There's all that what you were talking about, which is this kind of extremely high stakes. Did they or did they not pedophile situation?
Yeah.
But then there is this layer of the home videos.
Yes.
Which is it just creates which for those cinephile listeners. David, the oldest son, starts recording, gets really into home videos around the time in the 80s, starts recording all these home videos of the last 6 weeks of his dad before he goes to jail and is awaiting trial. And it is just so
raw.
Yes, raw and they're fighting, they're screaming at each other. And it was funny. The fights, obviously, I have not fought with my family about whether or not my dad is a pedophile, but the fights were relatable. It was like they were screaming at each other and about these high stakes things. And it was I mean, that plus the situation, plus the kind of all the hilarious sort of kind of Long Island characters. It was I mean, it was amazing. I would say the scene, obviously the bouncing on the child's lap and the leapfrog scene, both of those were jaw on the floor. The other one I'll add is when they're talking about Arnold's growing up and Arnold's mom going on dates. I don't want to spoil it, but like that, I was like, what the fuck?
You're right. That's the tease really right there. You got to find out what happened to Arnold Friedman as a child when his mom would go on dates. And the brother's unbelievable too. Like he's telling these stories. It's like, at one point Arnold says he had sex with his brother. You're like, what is going on?
No.
The brother's like, I have no idea of this. I have nothing. He like, does this move where he puts like the palm to his head. There's nothing there. I have no recollection of this. He was a great brother. I don't remember what he's talking about.
That's the other. There's the great part. Again, very relatable part of is just like loving your family and wanting to believe your family. There's the scene where like it's in writing that Arnold is like, I had sex with a child, and then David's like, well, that could mean anything.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't think that could mean anything.
Yeah, David was unbelievable. You're right. He's like,
Yeah.
he's so vigilantly like on the side of his dad. And you're right. He's like, what does that mean? He's like, you can have sex with a tree. I don't know what that means. What do you mean you know what it means? It's pretty like, dude, like that's one of the few things I wish like directly, like you do know your dad did have like child pornography. Like
Right.
how do you explain that? How do you not say, okay, that's the problem. Clearly there's an issue here. Like on every single charge, he's like, and you're right. That's like, if you really truly love your dad, you're going to defend him no matter what. But even a couple of times, like, dude, he wrote it in writing. It just, you can admit. You didn't say he didn't do it with the other things, but he did do this. But yeah, the brother's unbelievable. That stuff is Bob. But you nailed it. That's what makes a documentary special. Someone said, well, what makes it so unique? There's been stories about did they or didn't they in the past. It's the video. And that's why a great title, Capturing the Friedmans, because they're capturing this video of them at that time. That really is, you're right. That's what sets the documentary apart, because to have that type of video, just like, I'm gonna record my family in disintegration. Like even, David talking about his own feelings to the camera, as you said, yelling at the mom, like they're just all over the mom. They treat her like crap. Jesse, even the more as he's sentencing, right? They're outside like screwing around and being funny, and then like the lawyer's like, what kind of person does that? I'm like, well, you're in a moment of high stress. You're about to go to prison for 7 years. You're just dicking around. What do you expect them to do? Just be crying and mourning? Like, I get that. What about the mom though? Like, I mean, these kids just hate their mom so much.
It was like this amazing hyper specific thing, but then also a more general idea of the way that, like, especially in that era, women just got stiffed in these relationships. Like I would, and I think they say at one point where they're like, yeah, like she was annoying. The mom was ornery or whatever the word they use. And she did seem a little kind of like grating, annoying, but she did not deserve the treatment that she got. They are like, I mean, all this woman did was marry somebody who was at best hated her and didn't care about her, and at worst was a pedophile. And like all she did was want to leave him. And her whole family was like,
when these guys are like crushing, and I'm with you. I'm like, I wouldn't want to hang out with her. Like, I don't think she's a good hang. She definitely seems like a nag, kind of annoying. Just her delivery, the rolling of the eyes, definitely aloof. That was one thing that they were so mad at her, is that she wouldn't defend. I was like, I don't know if he did it. Maybe he did. Right. I don't know. I wasn't sure. She's like, but I stood by him the entire trial. Like, I sold jewelry to go raise money for the lawyers. Like, I got money from friends and family. Like, what more do you want? I'm like, yeah, I was a dutiful wife. I could have just dropped his ass right away. Totally. Only after he was sentenced in prison years later did I divorce him and eventually remarry. So I'm like, yeah, like give this woman some kudos, man. This was a miserable marriage, and she stuck through it.
Completely, yeah. No, I didn't think about it until just now, but she reminds me a little bit of Tony Soprano's mom. She had a little bit of the
Well, I don't know what he was talking about. If that's what he wanted, okay, fine. That passive aggressive nature. You're right. Oh my God, Olivia Soprano. Speaking of all-time great characters and hateable moms, awesome.
One other kind of it's hard to say funny because this movie is so dark, but
there is humor without it. You're right. Absolutely. I mean, even the fact that like dad was a musician, and they start showing the scene of like him and Seth, and they start kicking their legs, and the Jazz Bow Mambo. Like, that's the song you hear at the end credit. That's a great song in the middle of this movie. It's the Jazz Bow Mambo with the boogie feet. Like, it's crazy. Go ahead.
Him changing his name from to a more Spanish sounding name. Yeah, incredible. So I finished the movie, and you know how all these streaming services will then suggest a new film.
Yeah.
The films that they suggested were under comfort viewing. And so there's two reads of that. Either they got the algorithm got it messed up and they assumed that this was a family documentary, like a lighthearted one, or they were like, you're going to need to cool down after this.
Yeah.
I don't know what it was, but they were suggesting like Big Bang Theory, Sex in the City. I'm like, I don't know. It's certainly Sex in the City, but not the way they're talking about it.
Not the way you're thinking. They must have thought you need a cool down. Like, this is so dark and disturbing.
Yeah.
Maybe here's a little more upbeat thing, or maybe the algorithm is completely screwed up. Yeah. Either option is possible. All right, one more. Give us The Covenant before we get to Doug Liman.
Well, The Covenant is like a foil, I would say, to the Land of Bad, which is The Covenant didn't work for me. I love Guy Ritchie. I think The Gentleman is amazing. I love the Sherlock Holmes movies he does. I think he's really,
Right.
really good in those movies.
Yeah.
And this movie is a different take. It's an American, it's basically another military kind of Afghanistan, uh,
Right.
like war movie. It's got Jake
Mhm.
Gyllenhaal in it. My friend was joking, we were watching it. He was like, maybe Guy Ritchie just doesn't know how to write people with American accents. Because if they've got a British like twang, Guy Ritchie can have him be the most charismatic person on earth. Whereas Gyllenhaal just kind of seems flat in this movie. And I love Jake Gyllenhaal in general.
Yeah. He looked miscast in it when I first saw it. Go ahead. The trailer.
It just it again, it's trying to maybe, whereas Land of Bad, it knows what it is, which is this over the top war movie. This seems to be trying to get to the heart of some issue of some kind of like thread within what it's like being in the American military. But it's about this
Right.
bond between a translator and Jake Gyllenhaal, and it just to me ended up as like bogged down by all of that stuff. The best parts of the movie were when none of the story was going on and they were just running around shooting people and doing military stuff. So
Yeah.
I didn't love it. It also like I would say has this kind of half-hearted critique of the American military complex, which I was like, I don't know. Doesn't seem like we're really critiquing the American military. It kind of seems like we're like 95% of this is cool and awesome and epic that we're in Afghanistan. And then there's like 2 minutes where we're like, what if this is the wrong thing to do? So I was a little bit like, all right, I don't know about that.
Yeah. That reminds me, I
yeah.
haven't seen Twisters, but someone mentioned to me, like at some point, somebody should have mentioned climate change. Like if you're going to update this movie, it was like, hey, why are the Twisters happening? Why are there tornadoes? I don't want to get political here, but hey, you know what? But I probably they if they had that scene in the movie, it was excised from the finished cut.
Yeah, and like, I think you can take these movies where they are, right? Like I'm not affronted at the notion that this movie would be, propaganda for whatever, but I just it should be cool propaganda if they're going to be propaganda. They do it right.
Yeah, 100%. So The Covenant, not crazy about. 2 Maple Leafs, it sounds like for you.
I would say
personally.
2, yeah.
No, not great. Instigators is going to be in theaters this Friday. It's available on Apple Plus. Here's the director. He's a great dude. The Instigators, a new film from Apple original, will be in theaters on August 2nd. It'll be, of course, streaming on Apple Plus on August 9th. The director, who is a terrific one, Doug Liman, kind of to join us right now. Doug, it's great to see you. It's a terrific movie. Obviously, great chemistry with Matt Damon and Casey Affleck. But I want to start with a different actor. I'm sure no one started the interview today with this guy, Michael Stuhlbarg. He's one of my favorites. I love seeing him as the villain in your film, chewing the scenery. Tell me all about casting Michael.
Thing about Michael, I never worked with him before, but like, after I cast him and before we started shooting, he came into my office with literally 20 pages of questions about his character. Like, that's more pages there were more questions than there were lines of dialogue for his character in the movie. And I was like, oh my God, like, I don't even know if I have answers to all those questions. Like, and I'm not sure, like, and we spent like a grueling couple of hours, like going through his questions. And it's honestly one of the best experiences I've ever had with an actor. And when he showed up on set to film, he was on fire. And I was like, that is such an interesting process. And it just works.
Can you tell me some of the questions he was asking? Was it like his character's backstory, where the character came from? Like, what kind of stuff was he asking?
Yeah, it's hundreds of questions. It's all of that.
Right.
Like, it's, and it clearly works, because the first scene I filmed with him was the one inside the yacht club where he's planning the heist, where he drives the whole scene. He's literally talking nonstop. And we did take after take after take, and I was like, he was just brilliant. And I was like, some actors like know how to get the best performance out of themselves. And some actors, you have to figure out how to coax it out of them.
Right.
Stuhlbarg's the kind of person where he's like, he knows it's like, it's what a luxury as a filmmaker to be like, he's like, look, I know how to get my best performance out of me. Just answer all these questions. And then, You know, other actors come to set and you have to try to figure out how to coax something out of them, and they don't know it. I mean, when
He's
Matt
got
and
the
I first collaborated on Born Identity,
Mhm.
I was shooting a scene, and I had to use a very long lens because the background there was a problem with the snow, and it was when he's on the park bench in Switzerland. So it's early in the movie, and Matt gave me this look where something just, you see something click in his eyes. And I was like, that's it. That's the character right there. And he goes, what's the character? And I was like, that right there. He's like, I don't know what I just did. Like I was listening to, I'm like, we have to figure out what that is, because that's Jason Bourne right there. You're just going to click and go into this other violent mode. And it's whatever happened on your face. And then like, we had to figure out, it's almost like being like a psychiatrist to figure out like how to coax that out of somebody, because they didn't even know what they did. Stuhlbarg, he's like, I know how to get it out of me. Just answer these questions, and then you won't even have to direct me.
It's fascinating. He's got, like, to me, the funniest line of the movie when Matt's character keeps emphasizing the specific amount of money that he needs.
Yeah.
And Spielberg's response is, you know, hey, I need a 15-inch cock.
Yeah.
I asked God. He said, maybe next time.
And by the way, we had he did 7 different versions of that, 7 different, he ad-libbed on that one. He went off script a bunch of different ways. And
Right. It's amazing to watch him, man. He's such a great actor. I love the supporting cast as well. You know, Ving Rhames is fantastic. You know, Alfred Molina, Toby Jones. These guys are really good character actors showing up and having a blast. I want to ask you specifically about Ron Perlman. Is this the scariest politician you've ever seen in your life? Because I can't think of a more menacing one than Ron Perlman as Boston's mayor.
Yeah, no, I mean, first of all, like, there's the sort of the kismet of casting Ron Perlman. I was, you know, because I did Roadhouse and Instigators back to back, and I was shooting on the last day of Roadhouse in Las Vegas at a UFC fight, at a real UFC fight, and Ron Perlman was backstage at the fight,
right?
Because he has a relationship with UFC, and so I met him, and he said, "How come you never cast me in any movies? You've never offered me a part." And I'm looking at him, and I'm like, "You're going to regret asking me that, because I actually am about to offer you a part, like, right now." And he's like, "Well, I thought this was the last day of shooting on Roadhouse." I go, "It is, but in 4 weeks I started shooting Instigators, and I think I got an amazing part for you." And you know, like, it's because, you know, I went to school in Rhode Island, and there was a sort of a corrupt mayor in Rhode Island named Buddy Cianci who went to jail and then got reelected out of jail.
Yeah.
And that character always stuck with me. And it, you know, and Boston and Providence are right next to each other. And I was like, I kind of wanted to bring some of that energy to the mayor. And Ron was, you know, as I'm saying, like, if you ask me one thing I'm more proud of in Instigators than anything else, it's the supporting cast, and just how we took every role and did something special with it. And that's because I got people like Ron Perlman to come in.
Yeah, without question. Like, I'm watching Toby Jones, and like, maybe in his filmography, it's a relatively small role, but like, this guy's played Capote. Like, he's a terrific actor. Like, Molina obviously has been a great stage actor, screen actor, et cetera. So to your point, there's no wasted roles. Everyone's got,
you know, and I don't make political movies per se. Like, I don't put my own politics into the movies. Like, they may deal with politics, like Fair Game and or Born Identity deals with politics, but but I'm not like forcing my political views down people's throats. I understand I understand how to stay in my lane. That, like, people want to be entertained by me. Doesn't mean that the real world doesn't seep into my film, and that, you know, Ron Perlman playing a mayor who has lost re-election but refuses to concede has some, you know, there's some similarities to real world events, but I'm milking it for comedy.
Yes. 100%. We'll get to Roadhouse actually in a little bit. I just actually finally just watched it. And I really enjoyed it. I thought you did an excellent job with it after watching the original again. But I want to mention specifically your gift, Doug, with action sequences, and like the car chase in this movie is fantastic. And to me, I'm like,
any car chase is so challenging because in my head, I'm like, how could you top, Billy Friedkin and the French Connection? But how are you able to make such a great, authentic, entertaining car chase in Boston?
It really helps when you have Boston's favorite sons. I mean, it sounds like just a line, but seriously, like, if you want to do a great car chase, you need access. You need streets to be closed. What you're doing is very dangerous. You need the public cleared away, and you got to approach the governor of Massachusetts. You have to approach the mayor of Boston. And usually they say no because it wreaks havoc on a city to do the kinds of closures that we had to do on Instigators. But when it's the Afflecks and Matt Damon making the request, it wasn't like we got carte blanche, but we got enough access that we were able to do the car chase for real. And really the exciting thing for me for the car chase was, because you're right to cite Billy Friedkin, and that was influenced me on Born Identity. And I was like, the Born Identity car chases are, so I feel like it's like, you shouldn't go back there. Like, it's like winning in a casino, like take your winnings and leave.
Yeah.
But I decided, an Instigators to go back there with Matt. Even though I know we'll you're going to get compared to Born Identity, and it's like, so that's the reason not to do it. But the reason to do it is I thought, the really fun challenge for me on Instigators is to create a dialogue scene inside the car that's more entertaining than the car chase. And I thought we had the elements to do that because it's such a fun dynamic when you have a driver who's suicidal and a Casey Affleck's just learning that, and he's not driving, and Matt Damon is driving, and Casey, rightfully so, doesn't want Matt to drive if he's that's just not the quality you want in a driver in a high-speed chase. And they have their therapist in the car, Hong Chow, and she's trying to get Matt to slow down and stop, as any good therapist would. And if you're Casey, that's the last thing in the world you want the therapist to do. And there was so much fun dynamics to sort of mine and comedy to mine in that car. And I was like, can I do that while the car chase is happening? So that there's like really fun character scene inside the car. And if you look out the window, there's crazy shit happening outside the window.
I think you're able to do it. It's a wonderful scene, a really great set piece. And I love your choice of music in the movie. That sequence is set to Petula Clark's Downtown.
Yeah.
Later on, you use House of Pain's Jump Around.
Yeah.
How did you decide on those two very inspired musical choices?
Well, I have a really brilliant editor in Sar Klein who has a great musical taste. And Downtown was always in the script, just because it was such a funny idea that was really played for comedy. Yeah. But I've really been lucky in my career to have editors who have strong musical senses and work with me to sort of find exactly the right sound.
Talking right now with Doug Liman. Of course, The Instigators is the film which will be in theaters on August 2nd, on Apple Plus, August 9th, an Apple original film. I'm curious, did Ben Affleck have any involvement? Of course, he's Matt's producing partner and it's Casey's brother. Was he involved at all, or was it just Matt Damon and Casey Affleck in this instance and not Ben?
No, Ben worked on the script, and he's very much running Artist Equity. So like, right. If there was a studio, it was Ben.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And what, was it primarily script? Did he offer any directorial choices, or mainly just the script?
Yeah, he helped me on editing and, but he's producerial.
Right. In terms of the acting styles of Matt and Casey, again, you've worked with Matt previously in The Born Identity, have a good relationship with him. How would you describe work with Matt versus Casey?
Matt's a little bit more the adult in the room. And that's like, that sounds like I'm saying one's better than the other, when the reality is I probably prefer the adolescent in the room. It's a little bit more wild, a little more unexpected, a little bit, so I came away from Instigators just in love with Casey Affleck, like in love with working with him, in love with what he combing through the dailies and all of the choices he gave me, just the performance he put on screen, I just think, and I saw the movie last night with the audience for the first time, and I saw how Casey won over the whole audience, and that it's like, he's, it's, I love that, Casey's never really been the leading man in a big commercial movie like this. And, Matt's never been in a comedy like this. And it's like, I love putting actors in movies they've never done before. I mean, or kinds of roles they've never done before. I mean, right. I mean, when I cast Matt in Bourne Identity, it was like, he was a very unexpected choice. He's the last person in the world someone might have thought of back then to be in an action movie. He'd just, done Good Will Hunting and Talented Mr. Ripley. Those are not like roles you would never think of. You would think of for that, but I love showcasing actors in ways you have never seen them before, and it helps when you have superstars like Casey Affleck and Matt Damon, because they have a lot to offer.
No question about it. And it makes you think about, with comedies and works with acting stars, it makes me think of one of my favorite movies, which is Swingers, which it's amazing to think about. 1996, we're almost coming up on the 30th anniversary.
Yeah.
And for me, Doug, I'm like, it's not only one of the best movies of the 90s, it's one of the best comedies of the last 30 years. It's one of the most important independent films ever. And like, I think it's just brilliant upon brilliant. And it's probably the most rewatchable film, I think, of your filmography, which is saying something, because as you said, you did The Bourne Identity, you've done movies with Tom Cruise, Edge of Tomorrow, but I just adore Swingers. So any input you can tell me about the making of that movie, what it was like working with John and Vince?
It's one of the things I learned about myself and really about, filmmaking, is that, I shared the script to Swingers with my roommate at the time, who was like, I don't think you should make this film. The Vince Vaughn character, is saying disparaging things about women. It's like, he's not likable. And I'm like, well, I love that character. And they're like, no one's going to like that character. No one's going to like the movie, and because they're going to hate that character. I was like, well, I like that character. And I made the movie, and obviously people loved Vince Vaughn in the movie. Spielberg saw the movie because I showed it to, I couldn't get the rights to use the Jaws music. Even though other people had used it, at whatever point I was doing Swingers, Universal that owned Jaws said, Spielberg is sick of people imitating Jaws. You can't have the music. And I knew someone who knew someone who knew someone who knew Spielberg. And I was like, I got the film to him and said, could I please have permission to use the Jaws music? And Spielberg did two things. He said yes. And the second thing he did was he cast Vince Vaughn in Jurassic Park 2.
Yeah,
right then and there, just from seeing like a rough cut of Swingers. And then, but what I discovered is that, like, I should make movies that where if someone else made it, it would be different. That I'm bringing, like, part of what I'm bringing, like obviously if my roommate had made Swingers, it would have been a negative portrayal of Vince Vaughn's character because she didn't like him on the page, whereas I loved him. And I was like, that's a reason for me to make that movie, because I love that character that other people might not love. And so when I look at a script, when I look at Instigators, I'm like, everything I've led in my life is bringing me to a vision of how to make this movie that would be different than if some other filmmaker made it. Yeah. And that started with Swingers. I didn't realize it until after Swingers.
Well, and a great compliment I could pay you is that Sideways, which is another film that I love, I finally convinced my friends to watch it. And he goes, I'm getting real Swingers vibes from it. And I started laughing. He goes, that Giamatti character in Thomas Hayden Church, it reminds me a lot of Mikey and Trent. And I said, so all roads go back to Swingers.
Yeah.
It's funny how it works. Just a thought on Roadhouse, because I loved it, man. And I hadn't seen the original in a long time. So what I did was I rewatched the original, then I watched your version, and I liked your version better. And I thought it was updated and smarter and funnier and more ludicrous and more outrageous. But I love the locale. I love where you shot it. And Gyllenhaal is great. He's just unbelievably jacked up. And my favorite bit I wanted to ask you specifically about is the routine where the first time he's going to kick these guys' asses. And he says, hey, is there a hospital nearby?
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, there's 125. Yeah. Where did the idea stem from? Because I think that's such a funny conceit. And then you call it back later in the movie when he's about to beat the guy because, hey, just so you know, good news is I'm going to break this finger, but the hospital's 20 minutes away. Where did that come from? I think that specific idea was so funny.
That scene is why I chose to do the movie. That was in the script I was given. There were tons. The rest of the script didn't work. Conor McGregor's character didn't exist. It was about turtles. I mean, it was like it. But when you're like, where's that moment where you decide to make a movie? And in the case of Roadhouse, that one scene existed almost verbatim how you saw it in when you saw it. Yeah. And I thought, okay, I've never seen a character that, it's sort of trash talky to ask is there a hospital nearby? But that's a setup for Jake's character to then drive them to the hospital after he beats them up. Right. And I was like, I've never seen a character like that. So I was like locked into the journey. I was like, the rest of this, because you're like, if you looked at the script that I had at the time, you'd be like, well, that in almost no way resembles the final movie you made. Where was the decision to make the movie? Like, what did you sign on to? And I'm like, I signed on to that character because of that scene. And so, like, and in Instigators, there's like, it really was, the car chase and being like, the idea that Matt Damon's on the run with his therapist. And I'm like, I want to tell that story. There's tons of stuff we reworked around the whole movie. It's the third act of Instigators and the script they handed me took place underneath the bakery and it was too small. And I was like, tons of shit changed. But the core DNA of the movie of Matt and Casey on the run with Matt's therapist, that was like my North Star.
It's amazing. We all have different reasons for making movies or loving movies. I love the fact that you were able to give the insight and be able to recognize that. The Instigators, once again, is in theaters August 2nd. It's available on Apple Plus August 9th. One last thought as I thank you. One of my favorite parts of Swingers, of course, is when they're playing video games. It says, I'm going to make Gretzky's head bleed. Yeah. So I was laughing in the Instigators, seeing a hockey scene and Matt's monologue about Bobby Orr and like seeing his son. I love that you're able to weave in hockey, which is a very Bostonian thing. Doug Liman, terrific director.
I'm an aspiring hockey player. I'm really not very good, but I love playing ice hockey. And it started, by the way, playing video game ice hockey. And from that I was like, this is so fun playing on a video game. I'm going to go buy the gear and just start playing for real.
I love that the game inspired you. Doug Liman, terrific director and a hockey fan as well. Thanks so much, man. Thanks. I appreciate you.
Bye-bye.
All right. Thanks once again to Doug Liman. He was fantastic. Make sure you check out The Instigators, Matt Damon, Casey Affleck. I really enjoyed the film. And again, it'll be in theaters and available on Apple Plus on August 9th. Bi-weekly schedule right now for the summer schedule. So by the time we next convene, I promise you, I will have seen one of Twister's, Deadpool, Wolverine, if not both of them. And I believe M. Night Shyamalan has a new film as well called Trap, so maybe we'll get to that as well. But I like the fact we go all over the place. I like the fact Harry and I are giving you options here on Netflix. We're giving you stuff, older movies, newer movies. Hey, we run the gamut here when it comes to movies in Cinephile. So thanks so much, everyone, for checking us out. Enjoy the Olympics, and we'll see you at the movies.